Let's be real for a second. You're terrified of collapse, right? It's a quiet hum of anxiety in the back of your mind, a constant low-grade fear that the world you know is fragile. So you go online, you fall down the rabbit hole of survival blogs and gear reviews. You make a list, a meticulously researched catalog of everything you think you need to build a fortress against the unknown. You try to buy your way into feeling safe. It's a powerful illusion, the idea that security is a product you can add to your cart. That if you just have the right water filter, the right freeze-dried meals, the right tactical gear, you can insulate yourself from chaos. But that's a modern fantasy, a story sold to us by an industry that profits from our fear. But what if the blueprint for resilience isn't for sale? What if it's buried in the memories of people who lived through an era where the entire world's economy just stopped? Not a glitch, not a recession, but a full system failure that ground on for a decade. I'm talking about the Great Depression, not a temporary blip, a decade-long lesson in scarcity. This wasn't a 2-week supply chain disruption. It was a fundamental reordering of society where the bottom fell out, and there was no safety net to catch you. And in those kitchens, they weren't thinking about prepping. That's a luxury concept, born of abundance. They were thinking about tomorrow, with almost no money. They were thinking about how to turn a handful of something into a meal for a family of 5. Their solutions weren't in fancy catalogs. They weren't in vacuum-sealed packages with a 25-year shelf life. They were on the very bottom shelf of the store. Dirt cheap, unassuming. And they built a mindset on them. A mindset of resourcefulness that we have almost completely lost. Now, I'm not here to give you a shopping list. That would be missing the entire point. I'm here to walk you through a bit of history, to show you what sustained people when there was nothing. Because the true lesson isn't they had, but with what they had. An old-timer once told me, we didn't have options, we had ingenuity. That wasn't a complaint, it was a statement of fact. When the menu of choices is reduced to 1 or 2 items, your creativity is no longer a hobby. It becomes your primary tool for survival. And that started with what was in the pantry. The first historical staple was lentils. Now, dried beans of all kinds were crucial, but lentils, they had a particular edge. They were the unsung hero, the quiet workhorse of the Depression-era kitchen. They weren't just food, they were a strategic asset. Historical accounts and community cookbooks show they didn't need soaking overnight like other beans. That mattered when you needed to cook fast, with less fuel. In a world where every lump of coal or stick of wood was a cost, a food that cooked quickly was a significant advantage. They were a protein that could stretch a bone broth for days, turning a watery soup into something that could actually sustain a working man. A Depression-era cook might thicken a lentil soup with a handful of oatmeal to make it more filling, or mix them with a bit of rendered fat and wild onions for a sort of patty. They could be mashed and mixed with breadcrumbs to create a mock meatloaf, providing the texture and heartiness of meat without the cost. This wasn't just about making food taste good, it was about psychological satiety. It wasn't glamorous, it was metabolic fuel. The practice was about extracting every possible nutrient and calorie from the cheapest source available. Every meal was a calculation. How much fuel will this take? How many mouths will it feed? How can I make it feel like more than it is? It was a cultural shift, from seeing food as pleasure to seeing food as fundamental arithmetic. The joy came not from indulgence, but from the cleverness of one's own hands, from the small victory of creating a filling meal out of almost nothing. The second item, powdered milk. Fresh milk was a luxury. For many, it was an impossible dream. The infrastructure of daily delivery, the cost of refrigeration, the price of the milk itself, it all belonged to a world that had vanished. But canned, evaporated, or powdered milk became the quiet workhorse. It was used in countless Depression-era recipes to make cream soups, to add protein to bread, to make sauces. It was a source of calcium and vitamin D in a diet that was often dangerously deficient. A common practice was to reconstitute it weaker than directed to make it last longer. A can that was supposed to make a quart might be stretched to make two. It was thin, and the taste was a pale imitation, but it was something. It provided the illusion of normalcy. You could still have something white in your coffee, or make a baked item that felt a little more substantial. You could make a simple milk gravy or a basic custard. These small comforts were not trivial. They were acts of defiance against despair. It was a psychological anchor as much as a nutritional one. It maintained a thread of the everyday in a world that had completely unraveled. It was a way for a parent to give their child something that felt wholesome, a small act of care in a world that felt careless. And the third, animal fat. Every single bit of it. Lard, bacon grease, drippings from any meat. Nothing was wasted. In an era where meat was a rare treat, the fat it produced was almost more valuable than the meat itself. It was a byproduct that became a primary ingredient. This fat was calories. It was flavor. It was stored energy in a jar. Frying in it made other foods more satisfying. A potato fried in bacon grease was a completely different experience from a boiled one. It added a richness that made meager portions feel more substantial, tricking the brain into a sense of fullness. It was used to make desperate biscuits and gravies. A widespread practice was the depression gravy. Flour, water, and a tablespoon of precious fat poured over bread. It filled stomachs. It wasn't nutritious, but it stopped the gnawing hunger for a few hours. It was the epitome of making something from nothing. This wasn't about healthy eating. It was about caloric density and survival. The cultural mindset was one of total utilization. The fat wasn't trash, it was a treasure. You saved it, you guarded it, you used it sparingly. Every drop was accounted for. It was a liquid asset, a deposit in the bank of tomorrow's energy. So, what's the takeaway from this historical glance? It's not, go buy these three things. It's about understanding the mindset behind the staples. It's a direct challenge to our modern way of thinking, where we equate variety with security and convenience with progress. The Depression-era cook didn't see a bag of lentils. They saw a week of potential meals. They saw a network of stretches and extensions. They saw a foundation. They saw the base for a soup, the binder for a patty, the thickener for a stew. Their mind was a web of possibilities, not a list of recipes. Your modern weakness? You see a product. You see a check mark on a list. You see a single-use item for a specific recipe you found online. You think resilience is stored in a container. You believe that by accumulating enough trust, you will be prepared for anything. But history whispers that it's stored in the knowledge of what to do with that container when there are no more containers coming. It's in the muscle memory of your hands. It's in the confidence that you can look at a near-empty pantry and see not a crisis, but a challenge. It's in the practiced skill of transformation, of making something from nearly nothing. It's the ability to see a potato peel not as trash, but as a future crispy snack. It's knowing how to save seeds from a vegetable, how to turn stale bread into breadcrumbs or pudding, how to render fat. That's the real inheritance from that era. Not a specific food, but a specific flexibility. A grim, creative, stubborn flexibility. It's a deep, quiet confidence that isn't dependent on a full freezer or a stocked bunker. It's a resilience that lives inside you, not on your shelves. They didn't stockpile gadgets. They stockpiled know-how. They collected skills the way we collect possessions. That knowledge was lightweight, portable, and couldn't be stolen. It was the ultimate sustainable resource. And when the dust settled, literally, in some places, that know-how was the only thing that kept the lights on in the human spirit. It was the engine of community, the currency of mutual aid, and the foundation upon which they rebuilt their lives. One meager, ingeniously prepared meal at a time. Disclaimer: this video presents historical context only. It does not provide instructions or guidance to build devices, evade law enforcement, or replicate techniques. Viewer discretion is advised. Which of these historical anchors, the lentil, the powdered milk, or the saved fat, do you think played the most fascinating role in that era of resilience? Each represents a different facet of survival: quick fuel, psychological comfort, and caloric density. Let me know your thoughts below.